The U.S. annual defense policy bill for the next fiscal year has now gone into effect. The bill includes a key provision that restricts the country from unilaterally reducing the size of the U.S. forces Korea below current levels. South Korea's National Security Advisor Ri Song-nak, who is currently in Washington, said progress was made in talks with U.S. officials, adding that the two countries agreed to quickly implement follow-up measures to the summit between Presidents Lee Jae-myung and Donald Trump in October. U.S. President Donald Trump says he believes talks toward ending the war in Ukraine are getting close to something, with American and Russian officials expected to meet in Miami this weekend. Hello and thanks for joining us on Arirang News. U.S. President Donald Trump signed the National Defense Authorization Act for fiscal year 2026 into law, making it officially take effect. Our Kim Bo-kyung starts us off.
After President Trump signed the National Defense Authorization Act for next year on Thursday local time, it officially took effect immediately. The NDAA, an annual bill that authorizes military spending, was signed after it was passed by both chambers of Congress. The bill approves a defense budget of $901 billion, about $8 billion more than requested by the administration. A key provision bars the use of defense funds to reduce U.S. troops in South Korea below the current level of 28,500 and reaffirms the U.S. nuclear umbrella commitment to Seoul. The funding restriction, which had been absent during the Biden administration, returns under Trump's second term for the first time in 5 years. The bill also restricts funding for the transfer of wartime operational control from the U.S.-South Korea Combined Forces Command to a South Korea-led command to prevent the transfer process from deviating from the agreed framework. The restriction can be lifted after 60 days if the Defense Secretary certifies the transfer aligns with U.S. national security interests and has been coordinated with allies and member states of the United Nations Command. Provisions granting priority to South Korean and Japanese companies for investments in new shipyard construction in the U.S. were ultimately excluded from the final NDAA. Instead, the act calls for the development of a comprehensive strategy to improve the shipbuilding sector, including optimizing existing public shipyard infrastructure. When it comes to Europe, the NDAA prohibits reducing U.S. troop levels permanently stationed or deployed in Europe below 76,000 for more than 45 days. Adding to that, it authorized an additional $800 million in military assistance to Ukraine, as well as hundreds of millions of dollars in additional support for allies or strategic partners such as Israel, Taiwan, and Iraq. Kim Bo-kyung, Arirang News.
Meanwhile, South Korea's National Security Advisor Ri Song-nak, who is currently visiting the United States, says Seoul and Washington have agreed to quickly implement follow-up measures to the country's joint fact sheet. Ri said this while talking to the media on Thursday local time after completing his two-day schedule in Washington, D.C. He said there was progress in consultations with the U.S., though it was difficult to say which areas saw concrete achievements. Ri's visit to the U.S. started Tuesday, and he met with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio on the day of his arrival, and then Secretary of Energy Chris Wright the following day. He will continue his visit by traveling to New York to meet with UN officials before returning to South Korea. And U.S. President Donald Trump says peace talks to end the war in Ukraine are moving closer to a possible breakthrough. Now this comes as American and Russian officials prepare for a new round of talks in Miami this weekend. Our Lee Seung-jae has more.
U.S. President Donald Trump says talks aimed at ending the war in Ukraine are moving closer to a possible breakthrough as American, Russian, and Ukrainian officials prepare for a new round of diplomatic contacts this weekend. Speaking on Thursday, President Trump said negotiations are getting close to something ahead of a planned meeting in the United States involving Russian officials.
Well, they're getting close to something, but I hope Ukraine moves quickly. I hope Ukraine moves quickly because Russia's there. And, every time they take too much stand, then Russia changes their mind.
According to a U.S. official, a Kremlin envoy will travel to Florida to discuss Washington's proposal, part of an intensifying diplomatic push by the Trump administration to broker a deal. The official said Kirill Dmitriev, who heads Russia's Sovereign Wealth Fund, is scheduled to meet Saturday in Miami with President Trump's envoy Steve Witkoff, as well as Trump's son-in-law Jared Kushner. Witkoff and Kushner are expected to meet Dmitriev following earlier discussions this week in Berlin with Ukrainian and European officials. Those talks focused on U.S. security guarantees for Kyiv, possible territorial concessions, and other elements of the American-authored framework aimed at ending the conflict. Asked about the Miami meeting, Kremlin spokesperson Dmitry Peskov said on Thursday that Moscow is preparing for contacts with the U.S. to hear the results of the Berlin discussions, but declined to provide further details. Meanwhile, Ukrainian President Vladimir Zelensky struck a more skeptical tone. In an address on Wednesday, he said Russia is preparing the coming year as a year of war, despite ongoing U.S.-brokered peace efforts. Zelensky pointed to comments made by Russian President Vladimir Putin earlier in the week, saying they sent clear signals of Moscow's aggressive intent. Zelensky also highlighted an upcoming summit in Brussels, where European leaders are expected to discuss the possible use of roughly $250 billion in frozen Russian assets to support Ukraine. He said the outcome of those talks must ensure that Russia understands continuing the war next year makes no sense, adding that Europe's decision will be critical to sustaining Ukraine's defense and shaping the path forward. Lee Seung-jae, Arirang News.
On the economic front, producer prices rose for the third consecutive month in November, driven by the weak Korean won and strong demand for semiconductors. According to the Bank of Korea on Friday, the producer price index for November stood at 121.31, up 0.3% from the previous month. This followed a 0.4% increase in September and 0.3% in October. In detail, prices of industrial goods rose 0.8% month-on-month, led by increases in coal and petroleum products, up 5%, and computers, electronic and optical equipment, which rose 2.3%. Almost on a daily basis, the government is rolling out measures to address the Korean won's weakness against the greenback. The presidential office summoned top executives from the nation's biggest conglomerates, while the finance ministry loosened regulations to open the floodgates for dollar inflows. Our Kim Do-yeon reports.
The South Korean won is struggling. On Thursday, the local currency closed around 1,478 won against the US dollar. The recent lack of any sustained improvement is raising alarms that this high exchange rate is becoming entrenched as a new normal. Looking at the quarterly averages, the structural rise is stark. After averaging 1,399 won to the dollar in the first quarter, the rate surged to 1,453 won in the second quarter. Although it returned to the 1,300 won range during the third quarter, the fourth quarter has seen a sharp rebound, with the average breaching the 1,475 won mark. The government response started coming last month, and in the past few days it has been making announcements on a daily basis. For the latest response measures, top financial authorities led by Deputy Prime Minister Yoon Seok-hwa convened an emergency meeting on Thursday morning. Present at the meeting were chiefs of the Financial Services Commission, the Financial Supervisory Service, and the Bank of Korea. Flagging the currency volatility as a major concern, they launched a 24-hour joint monitoring system to respond to any market jitters. Meanwhile, the Ministry of Economy and Finance unveiled a deregulation package, with their efforts now going beyond the government and reaching private institutions for support. The government will drastically raise a ceiling on forward exchange positions for foreign banks to 200% and allow exporters to take out foreign currency loans for operational funds, measures designed to open the floodgates for dollar inflows. In addition, Presidential Chief of Staff for Policy Kim Yong-bom summoned executives from 7 major conglomerates, including Samsung, SK, Hyundai Motor, for an emergency meeting. This move is interpreted as a direct request for global exporters to cooperate by releasing their dollar holdings into the market. This is because exporters are hesitant to exchange dollars they earn into Korean won due to the current market conditions. But experts note this move might not have the desired impact.
Even if these large companies release their dollars, individual or institutional investors are likely to buy them up immediately to invest in the U.S. So while there might be a short-term impact, it is not a sustainable solution.
Meanwhile, with the weakened won to the greenback, the Bank of Korea projects next year's inflation to be 2.1% if the current exchange rate level holds. But if the won weakens further, it says the nation can expect inflation up to the mid-2% range. Kim Do-yeon, Arirang News.
A proposal backed by the ruling party to reshape how South Korea handles insurrection cases is reigniting political tensions at the National Assembly, as rival parties brace for a final showdown before the year ends. Our Buniran has a story.
South Korea's ruling Democratic Party says it will table a revised bill to establish a special court dedicated to insurrection-related cases at the National Assembly's final plenary session of the year, setting the stage for another fierce standoff with the opposition. The Assembly is scheduled to hold its last plenary session of 2025 from December 22nd to 24th, and the DP plans to put the revised bill on the agenda on December 23rd. The party argues a dedicated court is necessary to ensure swift and fair trials in cases of national importance, including charges of insurrection and foreign aggression, an argument it says reflects growing public demand for accountability.
Time can favor insurrectionists, not justice. The public wants swift and fair judgment. That's why a dedicated court is needed.
But the main opposition People Power Party strongly disputes that reasoning, warning that the revised bill still carries constitutional risks. It says the same logic could be used to create tailor-made courts for specific individuals, including President Lee Jae-myung.
As the Unification Church scandal turns toward the Democratic Party and the Lee administration, a regime-friendly special prosecutor is staging a political show.
The legal debate has been further complicated by a move from the judiciary itself. On Thursday, the Supreme Court announced it would establish special panels under new court rules to fast-track nationally significant cases, including insurrection and rebellion charges, citing the need for speed and fairness without legislative intervention. Court officials say the measure is designed to prevent delays caused by constitutional challenges, which could otherwise halt proceedings for months. Unlike the DP's bill, which creates a special court through legislation, the Supreme Court's plan preserves random case assignment and relies on internal court rules. Despite that, the DP says it will press ahead with legislation. With the People Power Party expected to launch a filibuster, passage of the bill is now likely to be pushed to the morning of December 24th, the final day of this year's plenary session, setting up one last political showdown before the year ends. 문혜련, Arirang News.
Yoon Seok-hwa, a central figure in South Korea's modern theater scene, passed away on Thursday at the age of 69. According to the Korean Actors Association, the veteran theater actress died after battling a brain tumor. She had undergone surgery for a malignant brain tumor in October 2022. Her final appearance on stage came in August of last year, when she made a brief 5-minute guest appearance in the play Toccata. Born in Seoul in 1956, Yoon made her stage debut in 1975. She earned widespread recognition for her powerful performances in numerous theatrical productions and later expanded her career as a producer and director.
This is The World Now, bringing you everything you need to know from around the globe. In the United States, the Trump administration has moved to sharply restrict transgender, gender-affirming medical care for minors. The Department of Health and Human Services has unveiled proposals that would cut off Medicaid and Medicare funding to hospitals providing puberty blockers, hormone therapy, or related procedures for children. Health Secretary Robert F. Kennedy Jr. said on Thursday that the treatments are, quote, malpractice, and that the changes would protect children's futures. The proposals would affect access to transgender care in nearly 24 states, where such care remains legal and covered by Medicaid. Major U.S. medical organizations oppose the move, saying it contradicts established standards of care and could put lives at risk. The rules still must go through a lengthy public review process, but hospitals have already begun halting care in anticipation of federal action. In Southeast Asia, Thailand on Thursday carried out airstrikes near Cambodia's Poi-Phet border crossing amid renewed fighting between the two countries. Thailand said it bombed a logistics center used to store BM-21 rocket systems. Officials from the two countries say the clashes this month have killed at least 21 people in Thailand and 17 in Cambodia. More than 800,000 people have been displaced. Poi-Phet is the largest land crossing between the two countries and a major casino hub. The fighting follows the collapse of a ceasefire brokered earlier this year by Malaysia and the United States. In the United States, a business jet on Thursday crashed while landing at Statesville Regional Airport in North Carolina, killing all 7 people on board. Authorities said the Cessna C550 erupted into flames after hitting the ground. The victims included retired NASCAR driver Greg Biffle, his wife, their 2 children, and 3 others. Flight records show the aircraft was registered to a company run by Biffle. NASCAR called Greg Biffle a champion and a beloved figure in the sport, and will be remembered for his passion for racing. In Egypt, scientists have discovered fossils of a previously unknown ancient crocodile species in the country's western desert. Researchers say the animal, named Wadisucus kasabi, lived around 80 million years ago and measured up to 4 meters long. The fossils were found near the Karga and Baris oases and included partial skulls from multiple individuals. Scientists say the discovery fills a major gap in North Africa's fossil record and helps explain how crocodile species evolved before the extinction of dinosaurs. Chu Ji-hyun, Arirang News.
It feels more like early spring than mid-December today. Many areas will enjoy a big jump in temperatures compared to yesterday. Seoul climbs to around 11 degrees Celsius, which is about 7 degrees higher than seasonal average, closer to late March levels than winter. And notice how warm it's going to be on parts of Jeju at 19 degrees, Busan topping out at 15 degrees with some afternoon rainfall. The rest of the country will be under cloudy skies with decent air quality nationwide. But that rain started in Busan will spread to most of the country by Saturday, dropping less than 5 millimeters. Then there will be a big drop in temperatures on Sunday. Looking ahead, another round of rain or snow is expected nationwide from Tuesday afternoon into Wednesday morning. That's including Christmas Eve before clear skies return on Christmas Day. But enjoy today's mild afternoon, but keep in mind winter is not going far.
That's all we have for today's noon edition of Arirang News. Thank you for watching. We'll be back at 5 p.m. Korea time. Stay tuned.